I wanted to describe some learning using the new alternative nut with the Powerscope. Just to describe what the differences are with the new alternative nut, it is a complete enclosure which is threaded through the arch wire. In terms of the conventional nut, to recap, it is one where the screw is tightened underneath the arch wire, which creates a so-called fourth wall to hold it in situ. Now, the nut itself is provided by the manufacturers as a right and left nut. They are threaded through the arch wire, and then the arch wire is placed in situ for the patient. Now, this is the nut itself, right? Just to describe what we're seeing here, here is the area for the screw to be tightened, and here is the gap which is used to thread through the actual arch wire. Now, there's a slightly different size here. One is larger on one side, and it is narrower on the other. The mistake I made is using the narrow side to thread through, which is difficult. In terms of the arch wire itself, it is a 1925 stainless steel wire which is used to thread this through for a 022 by 028 slot or a 018 slot. Then it is a 1725 stainless steel which is used. Now, in terms of its use itself, once it's been threaded through, the arch wire is placed in situ. Now, engaging the actual Powerscope itself, some things that I've learned in the process. Firstly, it is actually quite challenging to do intraorally in order to tighten the screw itself. On the right hand side, what goes against convention is that it is a counterclockwise movement to tighten it and clockwise to loosen it. In terms of placing it, the challenge is that it wobbles quite a lot in situ, and I was really struggling with this clinically. Manufacturers actually provide these small gold magnets, and I would strongly suggest anybody using the system does use the magnets. Now, the magnets themselves result in the actual screw being pulled in towards the hexagonal screwdriver, and that makes it monumentally easier to actually engage with the screw head itself and the screw itself. So just to recap, it's going to be a loosening by going in a clockwise direction, and to tighten it, it's in a counterclockwise for the right hand side. For the left hand side, it is a conventional approach. You can see the alternative nut has been placed here between the canine and the first premolar, as recommended by the manufacturer, and in the upper arch it's placed between the upper first molar and the second premolar. And engaging it is far easier, as I mentioned, using the actual magnet. If we don't use the magnet, what I found happened is that intraorally I'm struggling to maintain engagement with the actual screw head itself with the hexagonal screwdriver. It's moving around and I'm struggling to be able to get it to stay in situ. Once it's been engaged, we're then able to test the patient's activation of the wire, of the appliance itself. I simply ask them to open and close at that point. Manufacturers provide reactivation in terms of the use of 1, 2 and 3 millimeter metal crimpable hooks, which will be placed at the beginning of the appliance itself in terms of its extension, reactivating it or increasing the activation in terms of its use. So experiences so far using the alternative nut have been positive. Although it was a challenge to initially place it, I tried to use the conventional idea in terms of its positioning, i.e. doing it intraorally, including threading through the nut, which didn't work. But placing it before going into the patient is the way to do it, and then positioning the screw once it's in situ. Just to contrast that to the conventional nut on the left-hand side here, in terms of its place, it is different. The arrangement is such that the screw is already engaged with the nut itself, and it needs to be flush and not protruding through. And simply what will happen is that coming in at a 45-degree angle to begin with, we'll place it onto the arch wire itself, make sure it's fully engaged, and then tighten the screw. Now, what can sometimes be misunderstood about the conventional design is that the screw itself isn't there designed to hold it tight against the arch wire. It's simply there to create a fourth wall which prevents dislodging taking place. Now, the downside to this is that if there is any gap between the arch wire and the four walls which have now been created, there's a chance that there may be a dislodging that takes place off the appliance itself. I think that's where the advantage of the alternative nut is. It prevents dislodging occurring by having it threaded through the arch wire itself and not permitting any real disengagement to take place.